I was never alone. That's the strange part. There were always people around me, conversations, messages, noise, and yet I felt deeply, painfully alone. Not the kind of loneliness where no one is there, but the kind where everyone is there, and still no one really sees you. I used to think loneliness meant isolation, an empty room, no phone calls, no one to talk to, but adulthood taught me something different. Loneliness can exist in a crowded place. It can sit quietly at the dinner table. It can follow you into meetings, relationships, and even laughter. It doesn't need silence. It only needs distance. I was surrounded by people. At work, I spoke all day. With friends, I laughed on cue. With family, I nodded and smiled. From the outside, I looked fine, functional, present, normal. But inside, something felt disconnected, like I was participating in life, without actually being part of it. No one warned me that adulthood would feel like this. They talked about responsibilities, about careers, about building a future, but no one talked about how quiet your inner world becomes when you stop sharing it. Somewhere along the way, I learned to keep things to myself. Not because I wanted to, but because it felt easier. Explaining yourself takes energy, and energy becomes expensive when you're already tired. So I answered, "I'm fine," automatically. I laughed when expected. I changed the subject when conversations got too close. Not because I was lying, but because the truth felt too heavy to carry out loud. Loneliness doesn't always come from being unwanted. Sometimes it comes from being needed. When people only see you for what you provide, your help, your strength, your reliability, they stop asking how you are. They assume you're okay. Strong people rarely get checked on. I was surrounded by conversations, but none of them were about me. Everyone had something to say, something to complain about, something to celebrate. I listened. I supported. I stayed present. But no one noticed how quiet I became. And I didn't blame them. I trained them to see me that way. There's a moment when you realize you've become the listener in every room, the safe one, the stable one, the one who never asks for too much. At first, it feels like maturity. Later, it feels like disappearance. Loneliness in adulthood doesn't arrive suddenly. It builds slowly. One unanswered message, one canceled plan, one conversation where you stop sharing a little bit more than last time, until one day you notice that no one really knows what's going on in your life. Not because they don't care, but because you stopped letting them in. I used to believe that being surrounded meant being connected, but connection requires vulnerability, and vulnerability feels risky. When you've learned that people are busy, everyone is tired, everyone has problems. So you tell yourself, I'll deal with it on my own. And you do. until on your own becomes your default. I sat in rooms full of people and felt invisible, not ignored, just unnoticed. There's a difference. Ignored hurts loudly. Being unnoticed hurts quietly. Sometimes loneliness looks like success. You have a job. You're productive. You're doing what you're supposed to do. But no one sees the weight you carry at night. The thoughts that get louder when the world goes quiet. The feeling that if you disappeared for a while, life would keep moving exactly the same. I realized something painful. Being surrounded does not mean being known. And being known is what the heart actually needs. There were moments I wanted to say something, to admit I was tired, that I didn't feel okay, that I needed help. But the words stayed stuck. I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want to explain. I didn't want to be misunderstood. So I stayed quiet, and silence became my second language. Loneliness teaches you strange habits. You start talking to yourself more. You replay conversations that never happened. You imagine explaining your feelings to people who will never ask. You become very good at surviving quietly. The hardest part is realizing that no one is coming to rescue you. Not because people are cruel, but because everyone is fighting their own silent battles. Adulthood doesn't leave much room for emotional interruptions. I was surrounded by coworkers who needed results, by friends who needed support, by family who needed stability. Everyone needed something from me, but no one asked what I needed. And I didn't volunteer the answer. At some point, you stop expecting to be understood. You lower the bar. You tell yourself, this is just how life is. And maybe it is. But that doesn't make it less heavy. Loneliness changes the way you see the world. Crowds feel distant. Laughter feels temporary. Connection feels fragile. You start protecting yourself by keeping your inner world small, contained, safe. I learned to enjoy my own company, but not in a peaceful way, in a resigned way, like someone who stopped waiting. There's a quiet sadness in realizing that you could disappear emotionally long before you disappear physically. You show up, you function, you contribute, but no one knows the real you anymore. And over time, neither do you. I don't think loneliness is always about lacking people. Sometimes it's about lacking spaces where you can be fully yourself, unfiltered, unperforming, unexplained. I was surrounded, but alone, and it took me a long time to admit that those two things can exist together. Loneliness in adulthood is often invisible. It hides behind busy schedules, polite conversations, and quiet strength. The lesson is not that people don't care, but that connection requires courage. The courage to speak before you disappear. The courage to be seen before you become silent. Being surrounded is easy. Being known is rare. And sometimes it starts with allowing yourself to take up emotional space again. If this story felt familiar, if you've ever felt alone in a crowded room, you're not broken. You're human. And you're not the only one carrying this quietly. If you find comfort in stories like this, stories that don't rush you, but sit with you in the quiet, you're welcome to stay. This is Linger.